Hey, everybody. We'll start here in a second. Just waiting for a few more people to pop in. Can everybody hear me okay? Just note here and see if she pops on. Okay. So we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining. This is the Gridding Light Workshop, which is about bringing light into the earth and anchoring it down and kind of helping to spread more love and light and bring balance to the world of death and rebirth, as one of my guides would say. A lot of this, I know a couple of you have read the Many Can Die or Few book. Some of this was in that book and some of this is not in that book. So for those of you who have read it, some of this may be familiar to you. But I'm just going to start with kind of how it all started, I guess. Yeah. So, and actually, let me show you this too. So have you all seen this picture here? This is Mama Lady Death. She's also known as an Orisha. Oyo, but I forget the name of the African Orisha, but she's a goddess of life and death, of balance type of thing. And I learned a lot of this from her. So when you see me post like this image and talk about her, a lot of it comes back to this Gridding Light workshop. And years ago, when I was I guess waking up in various ways. I was in my 20s. I was working on protections. And one of the protections that I just always naturally did, especially when I went to bed, I would do these protections, white bubble of light, bring in angels, do all kinds of different things. And I just intuitively started bringing a beam of light down from source into the room and imagining that spreading out and just lighting every aspect of the room. So there was no shadow in the room. It was just a protective energy of source. I didn't know that was going to lead me into other things. Later on, I realized it was kind of the basis of some of the work that I would be doing with Gridding Light. And I ended up having a dream at one point where she came. She was in this form here, more of like a very golden looking African woman, high vibrational, and they were talking about things to come and saying like, hey, he's not ready yet, we're almost there. And they started introducing her to me. And so probably a year went by after that. And that's when I sat down and I started doing a lot of ET work. And I was working with beings and opening my third eye, trying to connect with beings of galactic worlds, interdimensional worlds, all this stuff where I thought they were, originally I thought all these beings I was working with were faeries, like on the earth plane. I never expected galactics. Like I knew they existed, but didn't expect to be working with those types of beings. It's kind of like we have these like, hey, the universe is so big, they have to exist, but are they really here? So I was doing that work, and one of the first sessions I had, this being showed up, and she was half rotted almost on one side of her face, and very most people would be afraid of what she looked like. And one of the things she said to me, she looked over me And she's like, "You're not afraid?" And I was like, "No, I'm not afraid." And she was like, "Good, you're ready now, but it'll be a little while." And she disappeared, and off she went. And I realized later this was one of those death god beings that I would be working with. And so through meditation, I start working with my guides. They start opening portals, wormholes. I travel to these different places and see all these different beings and meeting ETs and this. And one of my guides shows up and they start teaching me to open. They originally taught me how to use my third eye to open a wormhole to go take my energy and like see other planets, see other places in our universe. Then they came back and they were working with me. His name was Abu. He had a very Indian yogi. I think is the word yogi look to him, like the white clothing, the robes, and all that. And started opening actual portals in my bedroom. Him and another guide came and they would do it together and open these golden circles of light that would grow like this and then would hold them in place so that I could take my energy and move through. Now, when I say this too, this is all third eye sight type of stuff. Not seeing it with my eyes, but seeing it with my third eye. And having a lot of, when that happens, you have a lot of trust issues, I guess, because you're like, am I imagining this and all that? But that was interesting because the guides would actually interact with my cats. My one cat, who's actually sitting beside me right now, likes to scream a lot when things are around, and she would be screaming and they would be like, "No, be quiet, we have work to do," and she would shut up and just kind of pout and move away. So a lot of interactions that were like kind of proving to me at the time that this stuff was real, and they opened this portal and this I guess interdimensional is probably the best way to describe him, maybe an interdimensional galactic, but this dog humanoid being comes through who has like a face like I'm bad with dog breeds, but I'm gonna say probably like he's got like the big cheeks on him, not like kind of like a bulldog mixed with a pit bull probably would be a good description. But he comes through as a guide and starts saying, "I'm going to teach you to meet people. I want you to meet people. We're going to go into this dimensional space." So we start going in there, and I take my astral self. I go through while my guides hold this portal open, and I'm working in this space. And it's like a desert, beautiful desert. There's a storm off in the distance. There's these crossroads everywhere. It's like a place where you can go astrally, and there's just roads connecting all these different uh, meeting places. Essentially, when you hear of beings meeting at the crossroads, that's kind of the that whole world is just one giant crossroad of all kinds of different places. So we go in there, and sorry, my nose is itching for some reason. We go in there and we're working with getting used to his energy. He's talking to me. He's taking me down these paths and getting used to working in that space. And as we're doing that, he brings me to a crossroad with a fire pit. And we sit down and we start talking, and a woman walks up and sits down, and she's got this um, shaman-esque look to her. She's African, but she looks kind of like a shaman. She's holding bones and different things. And she starts working with me. And I'll be back in 1 second. I don't know what's just 1 second here. Excuse me. Probably have a cat hair on my nose. But so this woman sits down and she's sitting down at this fire pit and starts like shaking the bones and looking at me. And I could feel there's something different. I've worked by this time, a few months have gone by. I've worked with galactics, interdimensionals, faeries, and you can kind of, the more you work with them, the more you can feel their energy and be like, okay, they're from another world or they're from Earth, that type of thing. This being felt very much like they were from Earth, but they felt human, which was weird to me. Um, she felt human, and I start talking to her, and she, at one point, she like bounces on me in my astral self, and she's shaking the bones, and she's physically pulling energy out and pushing energy in and doing all this stuff that I can feel in my physical body while I'm laying there meditating. And I'm going like, what's going on? My guys are like, it's okay. Don't worry. This is supposed to happen. You know, it's not something that's malicious or anything. Just stay with it. I'm like, okay. So we keep going back and working with her, working with this woman. And every time I go, I'm like, she's not an interdimensional, like she's not galactic. Who is she? And they're like, in time, in time. And we get to one point where she reveals herself and shows me she's this African woman. She has long hair going down, kind of like smashed together in a braid kind of thing, wearing a white tank top, and kind of has jeans on. And she has a tattoo on her back. I was like, it's like a tattoo of a tree type of thing, not almost like a tree of life, not quite the same, but almost like a tree of life. And we're talking, and I go, what are you? Are you human? And she's like, yeah, I'm human. I'm from Africa. And I go, like, okay, no. I'm like, I'm talking to ETs and other stuff. I'm like, I'm not talking to another human across the world in this exact moment. That can't be right. Like, come on, who are you really? Are you a fairy? Are you a goddess? And she's like, no, I am a human. I'm in Africa right now. And she starts explaining her story and starts telling me how she was she's in the Congo. She's in a village down there. She had her own village and was captured at some point, and she has scars on her back from like abuse and stuff. Was captured at some point, got away, got to this village, and this village is kind of secluded in the Congo, deep in the Congo, and learned how to do all kinds of like shamanistic work and that type of thing, and how to connect with humans and do this type of thing. And here it turns out it was kind of like a soul. We're kind of like soul family in a way. I was waiting for her to come. She was waiting for me to come, type of thing. Student, teacher, soul family, that's the thing. So we start talking, and I'm like, okay, this can't be right. She goes, okay, I eat this food. This animal is here. This is the weather right now, and starts giving me all these details. And she goes, look them up on your computer on the internet. She's like, we know what that is. Go do that. And I go look, and I start validating, like, okay, the fruits that she showed me, I think it's called a Red River pig, like the territory of the pig, all this different stuff I didn't know. She starts sharing all this stuff with me. I'm like, oh, okay, she's legit. Like, I'm talking to somebody in Africa. And then she starts teaching me by putting my hand on her back. She's like, touch my back. And we're in this interdimensional space. So remember, my guides have this portal open. I'm physically in my bedroom laying down. My astral energy is in that space. Her astral energy is there from Africa. And my guides are holding the portal open, but she had the ability to just pop in. And I was like, how can she just pop into this world without opening this thing? And they go, it's just something that you learn with time. The more you do this work, the more you can just learn to pop into places. And that's what happened. The more I learned to tune to these different worlds and places, the more you learn to just pop into these places. So she says, put your hand on my back. And when you do that, it's kind of like creating a tether between you energetically with the being that you're speaking with. And so they can astrally bring themselves back to where they're at and show you what they're looking at, what take you around where they're at, because their astral self goes back to their physical, and you just kind of follow the energy with them. So I go, and she's sitting on a rock watching a waterfall. There's a village in the distance along a river, and start building a relationship with them. And after time, it's this difficulty of, because I'm learning how to do this and jump these different places. It's very focus it's very intensive, energetically intensive to do this type of thing. So it takes time to build. And the very first few weeks anyway, our goal was just to go to her, to sit there with her, build the ability to focus and be in that energy. So I did that with her. And then she starts teaching me. I get to a space where I can, I'm energetically aligned with kind of doing this astral travel work. And she starts teaching me how to get there quicker. So she takes me and shows me this tree in the jungle, kind of, 30, 40 feet into the jungle from the village, and goes, here's the tree. And we focus on building a bond specifically with that tree. So I can just snap there with my intent rather than having to have my guides come open a portal, go through it, be guided to where she's at and do all this stuff. So we do that. And then I'm able to travel instantaneously to that tree, to the village, and do work with them by this time. So she goes out, and we go out into the jungle essentially. And there's somewhere down the path, there's a bunch of land that's been deforested, taken for lumber and all that from the rainforest. And so we sit down, and there are plants growing back because she's already done work with this land. But she sits down and she starts showing me that if we sit down and start with a seed, she takes a seed and she kind of plants the seed. And she's like, okay, we're going to plant the seed. And we're going to sit down and we're just going to do this ritual. We're just going to sit here and use our intent. And we're going to bring light into that. And so we kind of imagine like source light, like I had always imagined for protection. We imagined source light coming through us. We imagined connecting to the earth, and our energy going down into the earth and connecting to it. And so Gaia is helping us, source is helping us. And then we put our hands kind of together, and we're putting our hands together and pushing energy into the seed and into the ground that's around it. And we did this for the seeds. We did this for little, like tiny seedlings and that sort of thing. And she's talking, I'm like, okay, so what is this? And at the time, I didn't know gridding light was even a term. It was just, we were bringing light and energy into this space. And she goes, it's a way for us to bring good energy into the land where it was destroyed, where there's a lot of destruction, to bring good energy into the land to help stabilize the plants. Now, what it does for the plant is it helps strengthen the plant so that it can grow faster, grow stronger, and grow more appropriately is the word that my guides are using right now, but it's more like appropriately, meaning trees, when they grow, they can bend, the saplings can bend, they can twist and all that. It's energy to make sure they grow to the best of their abilities, which would be straight up, full, and that sort of thing. So we push this energy into the ground, and we do this with all these little saplings, and we're just doing it with little seedlings, little tiny plants to begin with. But what I noticed is when we were doing this, the plants were growing really fast. They were growing much faster than plants like we would grow here. Now, granted, it's the jungle, and I asked them, I'm like, okay, this is the jungle, plants tend to grow really fast. And they're like, no, look at the plants around. It's the plants that we're putting energy into are just taking off and growing left and right. And you can feel the energy and kind of see the energy of the land around them shift. So then she takes me and she's like, okay, we're going to do some more grid work. And I forget what words they used at the time. I don't think they actually called it grid work. I think they were just like, we're just going to go to this field and push energy into it type of thing. But after I learned how to do bringing this energy down and pushing it into the land. There's this giant deforested area, and this giant deforested area is one of these places where it's just like there's just not a lot in there. There's the stumps, they just kind of left everything. There's just nothing there. And so they had gone, and the village had planted plants, planted seeds all through this place to help restore it. But it needed gritting, and it needed light. And so they were using it as a way to teach me how to do this. And so we go and we sit down and we start with a seedling in kind of the center of this field. And we're sitting there and we bring ourselves to, okay, call on source energy, call on Gaia, kind of bring it all together, and then push energy into this seedling. And then she goes, and this is where it got really interesting, is she goes, okay, we're pushing it into the seedling. Now imagine the energy coming out from that seedling, and then it hits the other plants and connects to them. And as it hits and connects, those plants help anchor light in through their roots. And so that energy is anchoring in. And then after it hits them and it's spreading out like a circle, every time it hits more plants, it's growing, and it's kind of the energy is like intertwining and locking in. And we're just using this one little anchor point, this seedling that we're using, but the energy is spreading out and, hitting seedlings, hitting, bushes that are still alive, all this different plant life. And then we're pulling this energy in from source, from Gaia, and just pushing it into that space to build a better, higher vibrational piece of land. And that higher vibrational energy helps feed plants, helps feed life, helps bring stuff back, rather than having chaos energy is the word that's coming to mind. Chaos energy of just a bunch of like dead brush and things kind of trying to randomly pop up. It's balancing it by purposefully planting the plants and then pushing energy in to help grow them so that it grows in a balanced way rather than just in a chaotic type of way. So we work on doing that, and it was the same thing. Like the seedlings are there, they're growing, and then a few days later, I'm like, man, these plants are growing like wild. They're just growing really, really fast. And one of the things they kept saying, it's like, when you do this, they're like, you can even do it with your house plants. You can take energy, push it into the soil of the house plants, and the house plants will grow. They'll be healthier, they'll be stronger. It's like that soil and that energy just helps give birth to that life and give strength to them. And they feed off that. For some reason, I'm thinking of if any of you garden, there's one of the ways you can do this gardening without actually doing it yourself is you take a rod and you shove it in the ground of the garden and you run copper wire around it and straight up and then into the garden, and it pulls like energy into the garden for, I don't remember if it's a 5-10 foot radius, but it pulls energy in, and it's supposed to do the same thing. You're just not doing it yourself with your own intent. It's the copper rods pulling energy from the air and stuff. And in this case, we're doing it with our intent in our own energy. We're bringing it down into these fields. So she shows me how to do this work. And then they start saying, okay, at the time I'm kind of bouncing where she's teaching me about gritting light, and then Mama keeps popping up and taking me under the waterfall, and we're doing some death work and stuff in there, and she's teaching me about outside of the death work, which is another topic altogether, but she's teaching me about balance and how there's a lot of imbalance in the world because of the destruction in the world. We have a lot of destruction just from destroying trees for packaging or doing all this other stuff. There's fires that come through, and forest fires that destroy the land and don't get regenerated the way they should, and all this other stuff. So she's talking to me about wanting me to do this work and teach people how to pull more energy and focus more of Gaia's energy from source and Gaia into these different areas to help rebalance the the loss of energy essentially. Because when say a fire comes through a field, it consumes the energy, the life force energy of that field, and something needs to come back to bring it back. So they start showing me how to open up. Now I have to try and remember this off the top of my head. If you read the book, the order of events might also be different because the books go straight off my journal dates. But they taught me how to jump from my apartment astrally to the interdimensional space to the tree. And then at this point, I'm just jumping to the tree. So it's like going from my apartment to the tree in Africa. And then she goes, okay, now follow me. And I go, okay, where are we going? And I touch her, and she astrally jumps to what I believe is California, some hills in California, just based on like the feel and kind of how it felt like we went across the world. And these fields are devastated. They're just gone, like entire sides of mountains, completely burned out, completely gone. It's like a really shocking thing to see because I've never seen that. I live in Ohio. We don't really have forest fires. Occasionally PA might have one, but nothing terrible. And this is just like total destruction in some of these places. And they go, we're going to show you how to grid this area and create grids of light that continuously pull light in and are pulling energy into that land to help the plants, the wildlife, to just bring renewal and balance back to this area. And so I go there and we do kind of the same thing. She takes me to a tree trunk astrally, and I'm sitting there at this tree trunk, and she goes, okay, do what we did with the seedling. Just, it's all about intention. Everything we do is about intention. Now, at the same time, there's a little like hand ritual type thing that she uses to help me focus the energy, where we're putting our hands together and then we're kind of moving them up and down to focus my intention. But in the end, it's all intention, everything we do. And sometimes we just use a little bit of a movement to help focus where our energy is going. So I look at this stump and I'm like, okay, what do I do? And she says, do the same thing with the sapling. Or the seedling. We're just doing it on a bigger scale. And so I put energy and I start pushing energy in. And while I'm doing this, she's just watching me. She's no longer helping me. And the amount, it's very telling how much energy work this takes, because when you're doing it with somebody who energetically is used to doing it, it's very easy. It's like you have that teacher there, it's very easy. And then when they step to the side, all of a sudden it just becomes very difficult. And so the energy work was a lot different when I was experiencing it in that space, because just her watching, but it was purposeful to teach me how to channel more of this energy into that stump. So I'm channeling the energy into the stump, and it's going out in a circle. And then after like 1 or 2 sessions, she's like, okay, now see that stump over there? She's like, now channel the energy into that stump, but go to the second stump too. And we start building these, I'm going to draw it out here while I'm talking. We start building these circles that are 5 circles in diameter based on stumps. So we start kind of with like 1 stump, and then we move up the line to 2, and then we come back. And what we do is we're pushing energy into 1 stump, finding a place here. And it might not be a stump, it could be branches, brush, whatever, but doing these like little points that are equidistant apart, then astrally jumping back, going to this line, jumping back, going to this line, jumping back, going to that line. And we're pushing this energy in, and it's creating essentially a circle. It's like creating a circle of energy that's fueled and locked in place. So she keeps showing me how to do this, and it's just a lot of intention, a lot of focus, a lot of visualization. But when you're astral, you can actually see and feel the energy moving through you, moving through that space into that area. Now, the interesting thing is when we're doing this, remember, I'm physically in my apartment, she's in Africa, but I'm astrally in the village too, and then over in California at this stump. And then what happens is you start realizing that the way we experience things is we experience them from two eyes. Then we have our third eye, but that can all split into like multiple televisions type of things. Because what would happen is she'd be like, okay, sit here, and she's like, that's the first stump. Push your energy into that stump, and I go, okay. And she goes, now with your intent, go to the next stump, but leave some of your energy at the first stump. And it didn't quite make sense at first. I'm like, okay, I tried it. I'm like, oh, well, this is weird. It's like splitting your energy to where the intention, like you leave, maybe the best word is to describe it is like a shadow almost. You leave a part of your energy there that just continues pushing energy from source and Gaia. And it's like the intent is there, so it just continues in that space. And then you split off your energy a bit and you move to another stump. And while you're at the other stump, you're doing this again. And each time you can see, it's like you can check in with the TVs, like how is the energy moving that I'm pushing through, because it's all you. Every space is you. But while you're there, it gets like have you all seen the Matrix movies with the architect and all the television screens and all that? It's kind of like that, like you're sitting there watching yourself on all these television screens, and you can keep adding them as you go. So the energy is like, as you're building this, every point is continuously getting energy and feeding until you're done. And when you're done, we just basically return to the first place we went to. And when we return to that first place we went to, we just use the intention and just kind of imagine the energy slowing down, closing up, and that space locks in place. And we come back and kind of follow our astral self back to where we need to go, pull all of our energy back to ourselves. Doing this type of work, it's always important. One of the things I tell people is, and I do this multiple days, is when you get done is just saying something like, Spirit, if it's in my highest good, please return my energy fragments to me now. And imagine all of your energy recollecting into you so you don't leave it different places. Now, with that, it gets even more complex, because remember, when I went to those what I call fire fields, these are mountains. This is not just doing a seedling in a tiny field that had the trees cut down over in Africa that they were working on. This is the side of a mountain, and this little circular grid that we put up is I don't know, it's hard for me to do like sizes and distances when I see them astrally, but let's say it's like 1/8 of an acre, and there's 100 acres of land that are wiped out. So we have this little kind of spot that's lit up. And so when you go and you see it, and every time you pop back into that space, it's like there's this little spot that's glowing. A lot of when I would see them, it'd be a lot of white, gold, and blue energy pouring into it. And when you do that, you also notice the energy over time. Like if I would leave it for a week and go back, the energy would have bled out into the land alongside it. So it's like just pulling that energy in, it's going to affect the land around it, because it's going to pull it into that space, but also kind of bleed out from there. And the energy of the rest of the land is just kind of dark and feels like a void, feels like there's not much there. The more we did this, the more I also saw wildlife come in, which was interesting too, because when I went, there wasn't much there. And then we'd push light in, and they'd be like, you'd see a mouse come up along, and then go back, and there'd be like a bird in the tree waiting for us to grid, or different animal life coming back, investigating like what's going on. This place is empty, but all of a sudden there's this bright light in the center. So I'd go back, and this grid turned into something where we kept going up the line. So we'd start at the center stump, go up the line, and then we'd do 1, 2, so that would be the next center. We'd go up 2 more points from there to create another center point, and then go out and create another circle and go up in that. And we did like 4 or 5 of those at a time and locked them into place. Every time you would create a circle, let me do this here. So if we have 4 circles here, there's still empty space here, but we never did anything to grid that, because what happens is when you have all this energy here, here, and here, it all bleeds into here. So it just ends up like filling itself because it's surrounded by that energy. And we would just imagine it. We keep doing it, splitting our energy, pushing more love and light. And that's the important thing I guess I haven't mentioned yet, is the intention is always like the highest energy of the highest good, love, light, healing from source, from Gaia, and to imagine it going into the land and kind of spreading out, and then doing these different points. And at these different points, they would connect, create these circles. And then if you went and created another circle, you could imagine it connecting to the other one and becoming more powerful and just bringing more energy into the space. So that's one of the biggest things that I did with the gridding light was these enormous fields. And they kept saying, you know, we want you to teach this at some point, which obviously I am now. The books are out, and so the books too are another way. And I was like, okay, but there's more to this. Like, it can't just be this. Like, what is this for? I didn't know much about it, type of thing, other than what we were doing. And I was like, well, that's not local. Like, we can use it locally, but how do we do this more? Well, then I went through this separation. I was with my old partner at the time, and we separated. And I moved back from, I was in more Lancaster, PA is like close to the Appalachian Mountains. I was more in that area. And then I moved back to Ohio, which is like flat land, nothing here type of thing. And came back to my old town, very country town, very low vibrational town. You know, not awake, not, how would I don't want to say it's like more of a conservative town, but it's like a religious town. That's the word I would use. It's more of a like religious lifestyle, farming community type of thing. So I come back and I'm like walking down the streets of my town. In my town, a lot of them, at least in Ohio, they're built in basically just grids. You know, there's a cross, there's a center of town, there's 2 roads, and then everything's built out around those 2 roads. And my guides started having me walk every day. And I was walking the cross. I was walking down, walking over. I was literally doing this, like walking down, walking over, walking back, doing this back and forth without realizing it for a couple months probably. And in those moments, I would always go out and I'd have, imagine a beam of light on me. Imagine that beam of source light on me just pouring into the ground and helping do things, helping the town out in whatever way it could. And so I'm walking down, and one day, and I don't remember how or why, but it just dawns on me. I'm like, I'm gridding light. I'm doing the same thing I was doing on the mountains and in Africa. I'm gridding this light, and like, what is going on? And I can see like my guides, Lady Death, they're around me. They're talking to me. They're all going, it took you long enough to realize. I never asked. I just kind of would go on my walks and walk this cross. And I even had a, in the beginning to, when I go to a new place, I'll use a GPS tracker to map my walk so that I know the mileage. so that I know, okay, if I take this route, it's 3 miles, which gives me, I know it'll be an hour and 20-minute walk or whatever it ends up being, and give me an idea of where to go so that I can keep going farther without getting too far away from home and I know the distance. All those maps always looked like a cross. And it just never dawned on me. I'm like, I'm doing the same grid work just in a different way. I'm walking down the street. I'm imagining light pouring down on me, going into the earth to help from source in doing this. And they go, okay, now that you know what you're doing, we're going to have you do some more. And I had very strong galactic connections by this time. And all of a sudden, the Arcturians are helping me, and I get this activation where, um, uh, how do I describe this? Have you all seen Doctor Strange by any chance? Movies? I didn't think so. I guess let me just draw real quick while I'm talking. So I get this activation, and it's comes down my arm, and I see it, and it's like these rings of blue light, basically, that are on my arm, and they are rings just like that, just like a ring, but they have all kinds of like, this is a terrible drawing too, by the way, but they have all kinds of symbols in them. And if you've seen any of the activations lately with all the like symbols that look like little language type of things, it's that type of thing, but it's very Arcturian. Arcturians are a galactic race with a lot of light technology and other things. And I'm like, what the heck is that? Because it just appears one day, like the activation turns on, it appears, and I'm just going, uh, I can see this on my arm. What's going on? What is this type of thing? And they explain it to me, and they're like, go for a walk. So I go for a walk, and they're like, put your arm out to the side and then just tap in and feel it. And I can feel the rings kind of spinning clockwise on my arm. And it's almost like it's this energy, whatever it is, however it manifests, it's like, uh, if a ring pops out, you can feel the other ones waiting and they're going to reload almost. So as I'm walking, there are these energetic rings on my arm, and I go, okay, what do I do with this? And they go, at every intersection, walk through the intersection and imagine it dropping down. Just use your intention and imagine this ring dropping down. And as it's doing this, before you get to the intersection, you kind of focus on this energy. And when you're focused on this energy, you can feel more energy going into that ring, and the ring's kind of growing in power and growing in power. And then when you get to the intersection, you use your intention, and that energy just falls off of your hand. This is the right hand is the hand we give with, the energetic hand that we usually give energy with. And they're like, it'll just drop onto the ground, and it'll expand to the size it needs to be to fill the intersection. And I'm like, okay, well, this is interesting. So, there's a lot of trust in doing this. So I'm like, okay, I'll go do this. And I'm watching as I go, and I'm breathing, and I just set my intention, and I see these rings growing in power. And when I get to these intersections, I'm like, okay, drop, just kind of like mentally think it. It drops down, it grows to the size of the intersection, like the center of town and all the crossroads and all that. And I do that with everyone I cross. And they set down, and it's almost like when you tap into that vibration, first of all, you can see them in your mind eye, third's eye too. You can see them kind of hit, and they start spinning. In energy, when that happens, you imagine source energy coming down and hitting that like an anchor, like it's an anchor point, so to speak. And then as we're doing this, so in the first field, we had like the seedlings were our anchor points. With the fire, it was like stumps and brush and stuff. And now we're actually creating energetic anchor points that don't need any physical thing. It's just an energetic anchor point, created with intention and some sort of activation that the Arcturians brought to me. And one of the things I don't think I said earlier, I believe all of you are aware of this though. A lot of my storytelling stuff is activating to people. So if you feel, a week from now, 3 weeks from now, if you start seeing something like that, then you're probably being activated, or if even farther in the future, to this type of light technology. Um, but I start putting those around town, and then they start having me go down side roads. And every time I'm walking on the sidewalk and I cross a driveway, they have me put like a miniature one down and put source energy into it and have that pour in. And the whole time I'm spending, I spent like, so I can't remember when I started. It took me about a year. They told me I'd be done in December of the year that I started. It was probably at least 8 months of just walking constantly, dropping this stuff, walking the same path a lot of times, like the same cross over and over, not going much further, but reinforcing those energies. So I'd drop an anchor. I called them ratchets at the time. If you read the book, they're called ratchets. Actually, these might not. This is after the book. Yeah, this is after the book. Um, so I initially called them ratchets because I would put them down, and when I would reinforce them, they had me turn my right hand 3 times to like lock more energy in, like you would a ratchet, the type of tool. So I'm like, okay, so I'm going around ratcheting these into place into the ground, reinforcing the energy. And the whole time I'm watching in my mind's eye, the town just start to glow. All this bright energy coming in, the center of town just pouring energy in. It took a while before that happened, but I was walking my path on the cross the one day, and I remember being down by one of the churches and turning around to go back and looking in like these little ratchets and the intersection ones, the ones in the driveways and the ones at the intersections. I could energetically see this like blue and white light just kind of permeating the roads and all of that as the center of town became more of the center of town has become the like the focal point for the beam of source energy. And then now that all the ratchets and things are in place, they permeate outwards and fuel those. And so then they take that energy and fuel the land around them. And what I ended up doing is taking these side roads when I was done with that original cross, and I was ratcheting along the side roads. And it actually got to a point where it became automatic. I had done it so much that I would just take a walk and not even know I was doing it. And like I'd forget about it. I would just be in the moment, I'd forget about it. And then I'd be like, oh, I need to be doing this. And they're like, it's all automatic now. You've done this so much, your energy just knows, drop it. And you check in and you would see like the energy from your arm dropping down and it doing this thing. So I started gridding side roads and noticing like the center of town, if I gridded a side road, it would all start kind of moving together to lock into place. So all that energy works together. And what it does is it raises the vibration of the town. Now, that doesn't mean of the people, be very clear. It helps. The idea is the more energy we have pouring into the land, the more those people will have to shift and be forced into doing those positive shifts to change the entire area. And that's the goal, is with this new energy pouring in, is that it's going to bring more awakening, more awareness, more love, more light, those types of things into the town. And so that was the big project I had at that time. And then I started realizing I could do this on a smaller level. While I was doing this, they were having me do it on a smaller level, where they would say, I'd be driving and they'd be go, pull over and go in that store. And I go, I don't want to go in that store. Like, I don't like going into busy stores and all that. Like, just go into that store for a minute. Don't worry about it. They'll be like a gift for you or something when you come out. And so I'd go pull over, I'd go into these different stores, and I'd turn on that beam of light energy, and I would do the same thing, but I would do it in a store. I would walk around the store, drop energy, drop the little ratchety things, and stay in however long I was guided. Walk out and just kind of place grids of energy wherever I was guided to go. Now, whenever I did that, the beauty of it was I would turn around and I would find like, I mean, at one point I was looking for a bed, a set of like bed sheets and a comforter and pillowcase, like new bedding type of thing. And I was like, why? I don't know where I'm gonna look for this. I mean, first of all, it's not, I'm a guy, it's not something that I typically know. I'm like, you could go to Walmart or wherever, and they go, no, 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 go grid light. And I went and gridded light one day, and then I was pointed to go to Big Lots. I went to Big Lots and found all of it for like 75% off. All this really nice stuff. And they're like, see, there's your gift. Like it's all super cheap. Here you go, get it, pick it up, go with it. So I was doing this work, and in a sense, the things I wanted to manifest, I would find them on deep, deep discount, or they would come for free, or other things, because I was doing essentially service work, like free service work for spirit, like going around and setting these grids up. And so if you ever feel called, like if intuitively nudge, like, hey, go in that store, it might be for something like that, some type of purpose of your light needs to be in that space. And then with this, just imagine a beam of source love and light coming down, imagine Gaia rooting up and just permeating that store, and imagine it just anchoring down. Now my anchors, like I said, they're a type of light technology. uh, it'll depend on, as you start your journey, and if you start doing grid light in imagining it consistently, is the word my guides are saying. If you do it consistently, at some point you might find yourself with something like that, or a different type of anchor, depending on the divine team you have and how they work with you, and what types of anchor points they use. The ones I use are Arcturian anchor points. Somebody's saying Lyran. Lyrans have a specific one too. But so I go, whenever I go places, I did it to my apartment. One time I was like uh, trying to reinforce the protections of my apartment. I was like, how do I do this? And my guys were like, you know how to do this. It's just gridding light. Just grid the apartment and put the anchors in your apartment. So I went around my apartment and I anchored those Arcturian ratchets around the apartment and source light. So it's always being fueled. And it's like this, when I check in, it's just like this glowing light that fuels like the energetic shields and stuff that I have, the intentions I have with that. It's just always pure, always trying to keep stuff out and keep it high vibrational and that type of thing. So you can do it in your own home, but we also do it outside too. One of the other stories that I had to share was, if you've been following me recently with the county fairgrounds, and I found some gnomes living out in the fairgrounds, and this is a big fielded area with some trees that I go to that is literally just a parking lot, but it's a field. It's a parking lot for when the fair comes to town for thousands and thousands of cars. And I found some gnomes, and one of them is named Lincoln. And he comes out and he's talking to me. And one of the first things he says is, "Oh, you can grid light. Can you grid this field, this area?" And I'm like, "Well, it's a natural area. Like, why? It's like there's, other than the fact that it's just a mowed field with some trees in it. Like, what's the reason?" And he goes, "Well, he says something like the metal and the all this other stuff, and then pops this image in my mind of the fairgrounds when it's in session and it's just full of cars." And I'm like, oh, now I understood. So he was asking me to grid this field for them. And he didn't ask again. I've been going out there for a couple months. And then I was out there the other day, and he comes out and he's like, "Hey, Siri, can you grid some light into here?" And I go, "Oh, why?" And then I feel the fairgrounds. Like, "Oh, the fair is in like a week. I need to grid some light." So I go and I grid all this light one day, and just imagining it, walking around, putting the ratchets in the field and all this, seeing the source light. What was interesting is when I dropped the anchor points for the corners. This is a square piece of property, so I did it as a square. When I dropped it for the corners, ships flew over and started beaming energy down and started anchoring more energy into those spaces. Ships that were kind of like out of phase with our physical reality. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, did that just happen? My guys, oh yeah, they're out there helping. If you drop the anchor points and have that connection to the galactics, they'll bring energy, more energy into those spaces. So then I left, and I was going to reinforce it. I think I was able to reinforce it one day before the fair came. It was like 2 days before that I gridded it, and then I think I only reinforced it once. And I went back out there, and you can feel the metal on the in the field, the cars, like all the cars that are there right now. I think today's the last day of the fair, but when you walk by, it's like you can feel the metal, and then you see these beams of light coming in and feeding underneath it. And what'll happen is it'll energetically, so my guides are saying right now, is it'll energetically shift people. It'll help shift their vibration, but specifically when they're there, it'll help energetically shift the way they make choices. They're showing me trash right now. So like a big one is like, hey, do I just throw this on the ground, or do I actually dispose of it, type of thing. Doing that type of thing in that area helps energetically shift people's choices for something that is of a higher good and not a low vibrational type of choice. I think I'm running. Yeah, I think that was the last story right now. Let's go. Yeah, and my guys just went quiet. They're like, nope, it's all good for the most part. So that is a lot of like the background that I have on what people call gridding light. Now, the one thing I'll say is if you look up the term gridding light, it may not be exactly what I do. I'm not sure. I've never researched it, but I know when I describe this to people, they're like, oh, that's gridding light. And then I ended up naturally taking on that term because I'm like, yeah, it really is. When you think of the circles and the squares and stuff that I learned how to do, you're making grids and placing it different places and anchoring it in. And the whole purpose and intention is to rebalance life, to awaken people, to help restore the natural aspects of the land and the natural energies, especially in these places that if you walk into town, it's very brick, cement, pavement type of feeling. So the natural energy just isn't all there. And when we do this gridding, especially like in a store, Walmart's a rough one. You go into a Walmart and you're spreading light around, and it's just like exhausting, I guess would be the point, because there's a lot of people that are so low vibrational that they just suck everything out of it when they go. And so you go into these places and we spread it around so that hopefully people pick up that energy and then shift with it. And hopefully it anchors into the land and shifts the people on the land to do better things, or shifts the land in the sense of, if it's been destroyed, helps it regrow faster rather than spending years in destruction. There's intention and love and energy there that's bringing in the plants, growing them faster, giving them stronger health, and then bringing in the animals. That was the interesting thing too, is the more we gridded light out in the fields, the more animals I would see coming in like coming in a investigative way, because when a place is destroyed, the animals leave. They go where the trees are, the bushes and all that. But when animals can see energy, and when they see the energy, they start going, oh, what's going on over there? Which means, they're fertilizing the land, they're dropping seeds, they're doing other things and helping helping it. So it's not necessarily just about the light itself, but how the light affects everything around it that helps rebalance and bring more energy back to those places. Let me ask you this at this time. Does anybody have any questions at all? Lori?
Now I was just unmuting in case. Sorry.
Anybody else? No questions at all? Did I do that good of a job, or did I confuse you? Or okay.
I guess I could ask, you mentioned bringing some source energy up through Gaia. Would that be through your feet, and would it meet in your heart if you're dropping the bracelets out of your hands? Like, what's the flow?
So the source energy itself, whenever I see it, it comes from above and comes down through like my crown area. And then Gaia, I imagine as I'm walking, I typically imagine my feet having roots in them that root into Gaia. So kind of like energetic roots as I'm walking. And so as I do that, I feel energy from Gaia come up through me. And I guess it would be like the heart space that it meets at, and kind of like your arms push the intention out of the energy. The physical arm has um, they're saying that that's like where the energy meets, but it like flows into your arms and flows out, specifically the right hand. I do some intentional work where I use my left to give energy. But I do know that when I use my left hand, it's um, like a weaker energy. But when I use my right hand, it's like full force. You know, if you considered a faucet, my left hand's more of a drip, and my other hand's like the faucet's on full power. You know, coming out the right hand type of thing. So it all kind of just moves up, and you can uh, they're saying like you don't even have to imagine the energy. You just set the intention that the energy moves up and through your right hand, and it'll do everything it needs to do. Um, but the big one is source energy, um, bringing source energy back into the land. Because even if you don't feel like you can root into Gaia as you're walking and do that, if you can imagine that source light, that's a lot of the energy that's taken, and then Gaia will end up rooting from the trees and life around it. It's just slower. And I know in your case you have those the fires that are going on there, and it's like if you have a destroyed piece of land and it's surrounded by woodlands, Gaia will eventually bring energy back, but it's a slower process because there are no energy workers really pushing intention in. When we do it as energy workers, we're like a really powerful tool compared to what the energy workers that are naturally out there can do. You know, the fae and stuff, they do their energy work, but for some reason it's like we're more powerful vessels to pull energy through.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Denise, Cindy, Andrea, nothing? Okay. Did everything make sense to everybody? Good. Okay. Andrea, you good?
Yeah, one question. You
Yeah.
mentioned that the lyre and anchor popped in. Is there any more information on that?
Let me see if I can draw it. I have a new Lyran friend named Atreyu. He picked the name from, if you've ever heard of the Never Ending Story, um, he picked the name from that. I'm not sure what this is, but it's kind of what they were showing me before. I did have a feeling this might apply to you too, when they were showing me earlier. Okay, so it's like this dual, whatever symbol energetic anchor they use. Where are we at here? Right here. So it's like this dual triangle with a cross or a diamond, but then there's these little like things on it. And the way he's showing, I don't know why I drew it like this, but the way he's showing me is like this part here anchors into the earth and this part sticks out. So they had me draw it upside down, but it should look like that, like be the ground, and this would be anchored in, and then there's a diamond point on top. Um, it's a it's an activation that people with Lyran ties will receive the more grid light they do. Um, he's basically saying like if you start doing grid work and kind of like what I did, I didn't have that Arcturian stuff for quite a long time. It just kind of activated one day. If you start doing this grid work and you're doing it in the stores and you're imagining source light coming down through you, and just intentionally imagine that come out, the each of us has a like a soul signature that ties back to galactic remembrance, and that galactic remembrance gets activated. And okay, so they're talking about past lives, like the galactic remembrance. So it's not that the Arcturians activated it for me, it's that I've done this in a past life. And so it's like once you activate it, it's just your energetic remembrance of being able to drop whatever that is. So for Lyrans, it would be whatever that point is, type of thing. And they're saying to practice, like if you wanted to have an activation like that, to practice, and you would eventually reach that activation.
Cool. Okay. Thanks.
Anybody else? Yeah. All right. Well, if that's all, I don't have anything else. I do think I'm gonna do a if you've seen the art activations that have been coming out, like there was one for 8/8, there's a third eye one, I think. I'm going to be doing more of those, and I'll be doing a gridding light version of that too, to help activate people to more easily do that work. That could potentially trigger activations of like that Arcturian nature or that Lyran nature too. But if yeah, if that's all, I'll post this video to the course platform, which I believe you all have access to. Do you have access to it, Lori? Okay. So I'll post this to the course platform, tie all of your accounts to it, so you have the video if you ever want to go back to it and rewatch it. When I do that art activation, I'm going to store it there. It'll probably end up on Instagram, but I'm also going to store it under the course platform, so that the idea is if you do any of the workshops and those activations come out, you don't have to scroll through Instagram. You just know exactly where to go to find it. And then, yeah, I don't have anything else. My guys are just saying that your homework's to go start spreading light. So, and if you have any questions, you know where to reach me, Instagram, email, that sort of thing. And then just let me know if anything comes up, and good luck with everything. Thank you for attending. I'm grateful for each and every one of you. Love you all. And just final questions, anything? Okay. I'll
Thank
talk
you.
to you. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye.